Shop the Sherwin-Williams sale and get 30% off Duration, Woodscapes, and Super Deck products May 1st through the 11th. Whether you're refreshing your interior or exterior, we've got the colors to bring your vision to life. And with delivery, getting everything to your door is easier than ever. Shop online to have it delivered or visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store. Click the banner to learn more. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details. Delivery available on qualifying orders.
Welcome to the Irish NFL Show in association with QuinnBet and the Believe Network. And we're keeping it in the Believe family for this podcast as we welcome Erin Coscarelli, host of Believe in Rams, alongside, of course, Rob Havenstein. Erin, it's great to see you again. I know we caught up with you in San Francisco when you were good enough to give us some of your time and sit down with us on Radio Row. A lot has happened in the league since then and in the world of the LA Rams in particular. How are you doing?
Great setup. Yes, I'm great. Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about what the Rams did during the draft. They kind of took over the news cycle, certainly in the NFL. And it is interesting, which I'm sure we'll get into, to kind of see the cyclical impact that the fans have taken from the first day of the draft, how they thought Snead and McVay were working together, or maybe not so much. It kind of took a world of its own in terms of what fans were feeling and even the rest of the NFL. But I'm sure we'll talk about it a lot to get into. Yes.
I know, right? Talk to us about the Ty Simpson pick. I was listening to you guys chopping it up on Believe in Rams, yourself and Rob and Nate Adkins from The Athletic, of course, on one of your more recent shows. There's so many different strands to this, but and you kind of touched on one briefly there as to whether or not Les Snead and Sean McVay are in lockstep here, which I guess fundamentally a GM and a coach can't always be in lockstep because Les Snead has to take the longer view. He has to keep the short-term view and the long-term view in mind, but that's not necessarily where maybe the coach, the players, and certainly the fans want to see the Rams right now. They would love to have seen that first-round draft pick spent on a player that might actually immediately help Matthew Stafford and help the team win the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, I mean, I was in the media room when we had the 3 days of the draft and we heard from either Snead and McVay or the scouting analytics team, which was on day 3. So the fan base, in terms of sort of interpreting McVay's body language when we were there that night, they drafted Ty Simpson and we kind of all asked, it was apparent. It did seem like McVay's demeanor was different than the sort of high energy, excitement, fast pace sort of behavior he typically shows to us when he's in a press conference. And I think a lot was made, though, interpreting it as though he and Snead were not on the same page, and it should have been more directed towards, I think he's just showcasing reverence for Matthew Stafford. Let's not dance on the grave of a guy who isn't going to be, a quarterback this season. Stafford is the guy. And I think that was what we were seeing when it came to McVay's demeanor. You're absolutely right. Les Snead, the general manager, has to think about positioning the team beyond Stafford and into the future. How do you do that? And that's the uniqueness of the Rams this season, right? They are building for the future and they're in win now mode. What a fortunate place to be in, but you also have to make really smart picks to protect, maintaining a very high caliber, always playoff expectation team. So when they picked Ty Simpson, number 13 overall, Jay Glazer, one of our, NFL insiders for Fox, sort of leaked it about 10 minutes before the pick happened. Obviously, Jay's not going to say something inaccurate. So then everybody in the media room's like, Ty Simpson, oh my God. Didn't see it on my bingo card. I thought, yes, Sadiq or a Kai Lemon would have been a more necessary need. But then that's what I'm talking about. Days after it started to sink in, and the pick actually makes a lot of sense. When will the Rams have this high of a draft pick? They don't expect to, end where they have a high pick, right? So why not spend a number 13 overall pick on a high IQ, high caliber, a guy that fits the system? They really like Ty Simpson's command of the offense. The ding against him is he doesn't have a ton of starting playing time experience. But the Rams say, hey, look, what better opportunity than sit behind Stafford 1 year, maybe 2, hopefully 2, we would hope. But at the end of the day, this is Stafford's team. They're just trying to create sort of leverage, an insurance plan should Stafford decide to leave next year.
I get that as well, as you say, that Sean McVay has to be very careful to thread the needle here around showing respect to Matthew Stafford. And I'm going to be careful before I throw this analogy out there, because I'm not for 1 second comparing Matthew Stafford and Aaron Rodgers, who are two very different characters. But this is what good teams do, right? This is what Brian Gutekunst did when Aaron Rodgers was quarterback in Green Bay. They drafted Jordan Love. They let Jordan Love sit for a couple of years. And then he arrives fully cooked and ready to take over the role. If you can get your next generation of quarterback talent on a cost control contract, you're in win now mode for an extended period.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, think about it. It's a luxury pick. They had a first round pick. They decided to spend it on a Trent McDuffie, who obviously they got in free agency from the Chiefs with that 29th overall pick. So really it was an opportunity. And I said it a few times, my social media blew up because I was really trying to give fans an inside perspective of what it was like on draft day in the Rams HQ. And I said, if we swap those picks, would fans be as freaked out? If Rams drafted Ty Simpson at
Hallmark Cards presents Mother's Day at Walgreens. Celebrate every mother figure in your life with a Hallmark card at Walgreens. Show how much she means to you and how deeply she's loved. A Hallmark card is the perfect way to say thank you for all she does. Don't forget, Mother's Day is Sunday, May 10th. Visit Walgreens today to find the perfect Hallmark Mother's Day card and make her feel truly special. Mother's Day means Hallmark cards at Walgreens.
29, and then got an impact player, which they needed. Secondary was their biggest issue heading into the draft, before free agency. So they kind of checked off all the boxes. And it just, it was just really interesting to see how fans got so riled up. And I think getting a guy to learn, we talk about the Chiefs. Remember, even Alex Smith was there before Patrick Mahomes. What a luxury to have a Jordan Love sit under an Aaron Rodgers, a Ty Simpson sit behind a Matthew Stafford. Let him learn the system so you're not throwing him in. I don't envy Fernando Mendoza, who has high expectations to go and fix a Raiders organization that just hasn't had a chance to compete in that division. This feels like the right decision to make when you're put in a situation that you don't want your quarterback, this elite, I believe, first ballot Hall of Famer. When he leaves, you got to figure out what the backup plan is eventually.
Now that the dust has settled there, and when you take a look back at this, I mean, there's fans of a lot of teams around the league who would love to have the kind of problems, quote unquote, that the Rams have, right? Because if you look at what they did in free agency, if you look at the draft, if you look at this large undrafted free agent class that they have now, and you look at where they finished up last season, I mean, this is a team that were within a hair's breadth of making the Super Bowl and landed more than a glove on the Seahawks, the eventual champions. They were in a similar position a year previous to that, with the Eagles being the opponents at that time. They've been very, very close 2 years now in a row, and they don't seem to be getting further away. They seem to be getting closer.
Yeah. Look, it's all making sense if you think about it. Super Bowl is going to be at SoFi this year. When did the Rams, last win a Super Bowl? They're hoping to hoist the Lombardi Trophy this year in their home stadium at SoFi in February on Valentine's Day, no less. They're all in. They really are all in. They've maneuvered the coaching staff. They brought in Cliff Kingsbury. I think he's going to be a really great sort of offensive lens to kind of help also navigate Ty Simpson. But then, I did a report recently about the dynamic 13-12 personnel that you're starting to see with all the tight ends that are being drafted. 22, a record number, I want to say, since I can't remember a record 22. It's a lot. And it's seeming to kind of show a trend of, if you look down who else the Rams drafted, also in a second round, Max Clare out of Ohio State, seems to suggest this type of offense, the Sean McVay thinking, is having an effect, a ripple effect on the rest of the league. So look, teams are taking note. I think the NFC still remains to be seen how it's going to all play out. But yes, the Rams have expectations of playing in the Super Bowl in their home field. They're doing everything they can. And to me, by selecting Ty Simpson means the Rams already thought they had a Super Bowl roster heading into the draft. And I'm going to go ahead and bet Les Snead, Sean McVay know a little bit more than the rest of us fans when it comes to understanding football.
You mentioned Cliff Kingsbury there. What do you make of that addition to the coaching staff, and what's his role going to be? I know he's assistant head coach, so it's a senior role.
Yeah, it is. And it's funny too, because they made the announcement when we were at Super Bowl during Super Bowl week, when they extended Snead and they extended McVay, they decided to add Cliff Kingsbury, but his role was sort of at the time sort of undefined. And now that we know a bit more, I think it goes to show it's kind of like we're splitting the responsibilities. I have a feeling, one of the things that's always been an issue for Sean McVay in the offseason, Mike LaFleur gets taken, Matt LaFleur gets a lot of his offensive minded staff, end up going somewhere else. And during one of our press conferences, when it was kind of the rumor mill was starting to turn with Chris Shula maybe leaving, talk about the Giants and that sort of thing, he's like, it's the best way to get your heart broken. He's very happy when his staff leaves, but he has to figure out how to bring in who else would fit in the culture. And it's all about culture for the Rams. First and foremost, it's a culture fit. That was also why they liked Ty Simpson and the rest of the guys that they drafted. But when it comes to Cliff Kingsbury, I think it's sort of an insurance plan yet again, strategizing. Let's set up so that McVay can do a really good job at just focusing on his job. And I think Cliff Kingsbury, might be helping sort of navigate some of the offensive issues, maybe tending to Ty Simpson, certain things that you can't clone Sean McVay. So I think having those two guys, and we just don't know how long Cliff Kingsbury is going to stay on the staff. It might be a placeholder until he decides he wants to leave somewhere else. But I think the Rams found him as, an offensive genius, perhaps, signaling what the Rams might do on an offensive structure this season. Because remember, they're in a division. It's the toughest division. Regardless of who the Niners draft, they got a lot of flack as well. They're always a competitor. The Seahawks, of course, they've got the best defense in the NFL. Trying to outsmart it's to me the most competitive division in the NFL, I think, is task number one. So I think that was why they brought in Cliff Kingsbury. We don't know how long he's going to end up staying. They like the way he thinks and what an added value he is to the Rams' offensive minds.
It's hard to imagine, Erin, as you mentioned, the competition in the division, which isn't getting any less stiff, that this division will send three teams again to the playoffs. The schedule fell relatively kindly for the West because you're matched up with the NFC South last year. So it's hard to imagine 3, 12 or 13 win teams coming out of that division again. So it's going to get even fiercer.
Yeah. Well, and we talked a bit before about the Melbourne game, and that's going to be interesting to see how is that going to get navigated. One of the big questions that I had is Sean McVay is notorious about trying to navigate biohack, jet lag. This is, I think, Melbourne, if I was there in September. I want to say it's a 17-hour difference, 17 hours ahead. So when you fly back, you're basically warp speed going back in time. You arrive a day before. I'm so curious. We get the very first, one of the biggest matchups because it's against the San Francisco 49ers, just a contentious team that regardless of if they're injured or not, which they were week 5, I want to say it was week 5 or week 6, they basically had their entire backup roster playing against the Rams, and they ended up winning.
Well, that was Mac Jones' finest hour of that game, right? That was a terrific matchup, yeah.
That's right. And it's just, Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay have each other's numbers. So to me, we get the best season opener because it's going to be in Melbourne. How are the Rams going to navigate the travel? A part of me thinks they're only going to get there maybe 2 days, 3, they're not going to waste a single moment. And to me, I find that kind of strategizing that's not just on the field, but off the field, the most like intoxicating, because you've got just juggernauts of like football experts trying to outsmart each other. How is that going to look? Kickoff is going to be so exciting.
We spoke about this during Super Bowl week as well, because I remember Christian McCaffrey in maybe a slightly unguarded moment being asked about the Melbourne game and saying, yeah, that's kind of a problem. I don't know how we're going to prepare for that, which is very unusual for players not to just toe the NFL line and say, oh, we can't wait to get to Australia, can't wait to meet the fans. It's great to be able to play our game over there. And I also noticed Kyle Shanahan then must have been, was that at the Combine? Or no, it was the owners meeting. Yeah. Kind of trolling and saying, well, the Rams would have pushed for this one because they don't want 49ers fans showing up at SoFi en masse. So it's an easier one for them. There's a lot riding on this game.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because yes, we all paid attention to what Kyle Shanahan said about how the Rams nominated. I don't even know if you can do that, but to give you some backstory for people at home, typically, because the Rams are so new to the LA market. And when I say new, obviously they've been in LA for 10 years, but they're still trying to sort of generate a real hardcore, genuine fan base. They've got work to do. They have the Lakers, they have the Dodgers. So when you think of like going to a sporting match, a sporting game, maybe Rams isn't number one on the docket. And so for 49ers fans who have been, all crazy about football for however long, because the Niners have been there and they're just a legacy team, they know that SoFi is not that long of a distance, long of a travel. So it becomes, they call it, Levi's of the South, because it just ends up being such a home field advantage to the Niners and a disadvantage to the Rams. So this whole backstory of Kyle Shanahan kind of complaining or maybe being frustrated because the Rams nominated the Niners, because the Niners, when they play at SoFi, it does kind of make sense, but it is what it is. Both teams have to travel. Both teams have to play. Both teams have to deal with jet lag. Both teams have to come back and continue the rest of their their schedule. I think for Kyle Shanahan, Mexico City, they have to go out of the country again, and that might be part of the sort of contentious feelings that he has. But at the end of the day, both teams have to play in Melbourne. So may the best team win.
Yeah, as you say it, you guys are pretty spoiled in that market. You've got Shohei, you've got LeBron, you've got Matthew Stafford. There's a lot going on, a lot of competition for those eyeballs in LA.
We're a very lucky market. I grew up in Los Angeles, born and raised here. My family, all crazy Dodger fans, Laker fans. My dad played football against Mike Garrett back in the day. So we just kind of always were an athletic. We loved LA sports, and we have an abundance of riches when it comes to great content and sports content. But the Rams, to me, deliver the best, because just all the storylines. Matthew Stafford, 4 daughters, wins the MVP, wasn't even available during training camp because he had his back was, it's been an up and down. To me, you don't even have to love the game of football, but you can love the storylines of the Rams. And that's, to me, my favorite part, because it is relatable in a lot of ways. I do love the story of the underdog. For some reason, Matthew Stafford still doesn't get his flowers. People don't expect. And then he wins the MVP. It's like, let the actions do a lot of the talking, and Stafford does that.
We are, would you believe, on the Irish NFL show, already planning ahead for SoFi for next year, Erin. We've the flights booked and the accommodation booked, and we're going to show up in force in Radio Row again, we hope, in 2026, 27. My God, it'll be 2027.
I know.
Valentine's Day 2027. I feel like I'm marking my life off already. Will the Rams be playing at home in that Super Bowl?
Wow. For the local businesses of Los Angeles, and like I said, growing up here, it would be great for the community of LA to have their home team, like they did in the 2021 season, play in the Super Bowl. We hope so. We just want to see a good game. We want to see good competition. We hope that the team stays healthy for the long haul, and we just want to see a good product on the field. So to me, that is the Rams, because they really they seem to figure it out, and now they've got 100 tight ends on the roster. So we might see a completely diversified offense from Sean McVay. You never know.
we could see another Bengals-Rams Super Bowl if the Bengals can get it together, Aaron. Maybe before Joe Burrow jumps ship and goes to the other side of the room, if the rumors are to be believed, the long-term rumors. What a soap opera that would be. Erin Coscarelli, thanks very much for joining us on the Irish NFL Show.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.